That time of difficulty will either cause you to run from the Lord or to the Lord. So Jesus says, blessed are those who run to the Lord in that time of difficulty. Also interesting, in verse 22, Jesus begins to list the miracles. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, and it goes on. And so what Jesus uses here is he uses the miracles as an authentication of his ministry. That's what he points to. He doesn't point to his teaching. There's no teaching here in this chapter. So here, the miracles that are taking place are miracles of restoring individuals. The blind see, the lame walk. But there's no mention of overthrowing the Roman Empire. John wanted to hear that. That's not mentioned. Well, like many of us in a dark time, write this down, John saw what God isn't doing, so Jesus reminds him of what God is doing. One of the things that Cheryl and I have learned through the years is that there are times, and I think there's always a time where there's this thing that we're praying about, we want to see take place, but it's just not happened. It's not happening. And sometimes what we can do, if we're not careful, we begin to focus in on what hasn't taken place. And what we've had to learn to do is that when that happens, we begin to tell each other the stories of all the times that God has shown up in our life and all the things that he has done in our life. Because if we just focus in on what hasn't happened, then we go down that dark hole. So that's why we're intentional about sharing. Here's what God has done. That encourages us and causes us to keep on believing for what hasn't happened yet. Would that make sense to you? And you want to do that. You want to do that. Okay, so verse 22, the opening line, it says, and he answered and said to them, go and report to John. Okay, so that's the thing. Everything that happens here is going to be reported to John. Now, this also is going to be reported to John, and it's verse 23. Verse 23, this is part that's reported to John. Blessed is he who does not take offense at me. Blessed is he who does not take offense at me. So that's kind of awkward. This is a message being sent to John. I put it there on your outline. It says, and blessed is anyone who does not take offense. The Greek word there, just for fun, is skandalizuo, from where we get the English word, take a guess, scandalize, that would be the English word. But that word is very different in the Greek than how we use it in the English. So the New Living Translation will translate that verse differently. It'll say this. And he added, God blesses those who do not fall away because of me. Blesses those who do not fall away because of me. This is a message being sent to John. Now, I put the definition there on your outline. I've condensed the definition. It's much greater, but I've condensed it. So the word here for skandalizuo means to cause a person to begin to distrust and desert one whom he ought to trust and obey, or to cause to fall away, Slightly different than our understanding. So here, what Jesus is saying is that there is a special blessing on those who are trapped in a situation they cannot get out of. It looks as though the whole world has abandoned them. They're treated unfairly, but blessed are those whose faith is not destroyed under such difficult circumstances. What you'll find is many people walk away from the Lord. They're all in with Jesus as long as everything's going well. But when it's not going well, then they're done. So here, you want to write this down, Jesus encourages John, and I would say us, to continue to be faithful even when it doesn't make sense. Maybe John is expecting a political solution, and that's not happening. And it's not happening in John's timeline. So in our situation, the question is, are we going to be faithful to the Lord even if it doesn't work out? And that's a decision every one of us has to make. And I won't go into the story, but I remember the day when life was not working out the way that I wanted in any aspect at all, relationally, marriage, and before I married Cheryl, and getting up in years, and just everything was, I can't go into the story because it's a very challenging time. But I remember the day when I just said, Lord, from this day on, if it never works out in this lifetime, I'm going to follow you. And it was when I crossed that line, that's when God began to show up in my life, and God began to change my circumstance. And that doesn't happen until we cross the line. So I've learned that God moves on our behalf when we cross that line and we say, I'm in regardless. So we might paraphrase verse 23 by saying, blessed are those who don't fall away when it's not working out the way that they wanted.